Scents, they live in time and space. And scent experiences are not just the chemicals. There is much more to it, making people more aware of the potential of their sense of smell, and that there are technologies that can be part of your everyday life. That's the dream.
Marianna Obrist is redefining the way we experience the world around us, one sense at a time. A pioneering researcher in human-computer interaction, she's unlocking the power of smell as a key part of our digital future. From enhancing memories to transforming healthcare, her work explores how using scents can deepen our lives in ways we've never imagined. She's leading a movement where technology doesn't just engage the mind, it taps into our deepest senses.
It's an invisible disorder. Often we don't even know if our sense of smell is working as it should be, because there is no baseline. Digital smell is understood as I can capture a scent here and then I recreate it in a different location there, so you can also smell it. We can use other sensory modalities like sounds, who could give you an indication of how something smells. When we're meeting someone for the first time, we shake the hand, and then the first thing we do is we move that hand towards our nose. We are starting to sniff the other person. Subconsciously, we are sharing these chemical signals, and they also influence if we like someone, if we trust someone. There are many more senses which we need to consider. Some they say there are 20 or 30 different senses. What distinguishes us as humans? And if you think how AI is advancing, do we need humans? We want to be science-driven. That means not just creating another gadget, but it should actually improve people's lives.
Hello, Marianna. Welcome to the Humanware Project.
Thanks very much for having me today.
Your topic of interest and research are so fascinating. What got you into the smell technology?
I'm looking at multisensory experiences through all the different modalities. So usually we think about our eyes, the hearing, but I'm also very much interested in touch, taste, and smell, as you mentioned. Smell dominated a lot the last decade of my research. The reason why I got into it is always a good question, because I don't really know. Sometimes I say, well, it just happened. But I think what I was always very fascinated about when I started working in human-computer interaction is we forget that the human brings so many more capabilities into this relationship with technology. But when we are designing new devices and interfaces, we often just think about our eyes and our ears. And so that's when I started thinking, how can we actually design also for our sense of touch and taste and smell? And why would it be important? And above all, what are the experiences we can create to create new interactions with technologies?
Can you take us a little closer about multisensory experiences? What are they, and does everybody have it in daily life?
Yes, multisensory experiences are just part of our everyday life. So everything we do, we experience it through all our senses, and our brain is integrating that in order to give us a picture of the world. So right now, I can see you, I can hear the movements of the chairs. If I go around, I hear your voice. But also, if I think about it, I can feel the softness of the chair. And I'm sure there is a smell in this room. And also, I still have the taste of the tea in my tongue. So it's all the different sensory elements. They give us a picture of the world. And that is kind of like where we are then sensing, processing this information, and make certain decisions, change our behaviors, and they also affect our emotions. And so that is a very rich information processing humans just do naturally.
When I think about my five senses, there will be certain senses overpowering the other. For me, I'm very visual, and maybe for some people, they are very sound-oriented. And can you tell us what are the difference between each senses, and also what happened in our brain when, let's say, let's touch or we smell? Are they all processed in the same part of our brain, or some travel faster?
It's a very interesting question, and there is definitely a dominance of our visual sense, because that's why we are surrounded very much by visual stimuli. And also there are different situations. The context very much defines how the different senses play a role and the hierarchy. So think about one example which is very common. Eating is the most multisensory experience we can imagine. So first you see the dish in front of you, then you go closer and you might get the smells emerging from the dish. Then you put it in your mouth, so you get the different textures. You may hear you're chewing, so you have the sounds as well and the crackling. And then you obviously have flavors which come through what you smell, what you taste, and also how your kind of food is processed in the mouth. So all the different senses come together to create this multisensory picture of the food you are eating. All the different sensory elements, they are translated from a stimulus into our brain where they're processed, and then there are higher level kind of processing happening which stimulates certain memories, like for smell, or certain emotional reactions. One of the unique things which fascinated us to focus particularly on smell is the only sense which has a direct connections to the brain. So when the molecules enter your nose, they go into your brain, and that's where it's directly connected to your memories and emotion, where others, they're kind of, in my layperson terms, go through a relay processing those sensory information in your brain.
For many of us, when we go to a room, for me at least, most time it's the smell bring me back to a certain memory faster than anything else. So could you explain to us why smell, like why those are the sensors go faster than all other four senses?
It's a really interesting question. It's really about this direct link between the molecules that enter your nose through the receptors in your brain, and then very close to the amygdala, where it's our the emotional brain, basically, and also our memories. And so it has, because it's directly linked to the brain, it has this kind of effect of, it brings you back in time, and you have these flashbacks, and it can kind of like elicit memories which are in our childhood and you haven't thought of them, but that flavor or smell really just brings you back. It's that fascinating thing that can have very positive, that can bring a smile to your face, but at the same time it can also evoke certain negative emotions which you might have forgotten. And so it makes it a very powerful human sense that is very, very strongly linked to our behaviors, emotions, and decision making.
Certain people describe when they're in psychedelic, they can see the music as a shape. So what happened to our brain when both senses merge into one another?
It reminds me very much of two streams of research. So on one hand, you have synesthesia, where certain people, they see a number, and the number is reminding them of green. Or they think of Monday and it's associated with a sound. And that's kind of naturally occurring. So you kind of like matching between two different modalities, so colors and shapes, for example, as well. And then you have the other part, which is cross-modal correspondences, where one kind of sensory element in one modality corresponds to another sensory element in another modality. The example used most often is like, for example, you see the color red and you associate it with sweet. So, which is then often also used when you want to create new packaging, and it's something sweet inside, then you're using more red or purple to indicate that, because people have these associations. Or if you want to associate something which is a sour taste, you might combine it with some angular shapes, so something spiky, because that kind of makes you think of some sharpness and sourness. So you have this kind of correspondences between different sensory elements in two different modalities.
That's very interesting to put the behavioral and also sensory experience into the marketing and also product design.
It's very interesting in the sensory marketing aspect, but I think it also has a lot of opportunity for sensory substitution. When you think about people who miss certain modalities, like blind individuals or people who can't hear, or even people who don't have a sense of smell, they are limited in the way how they can experience the everyday world because they're missing certain elements. They often describe it as they're living behind a mirror. So they don't get the full colors of life and the world because they can't smell each other, they can't smell the food, they can't smell themselves. And that creates this kind of barriers. And so we can use other sensory modalities like sounds, who potentially could give you an indication of how something smells. Like when, again, if you're thinking about food, I can't smell the food, but I can give you a very high-pitched sound, then that might indicate this is something which is acidic and that has like vinegar in it, for example. Or I give you a different sound that indicates the softness of a sweetness. And yes, you cannot fully achieve the experience of the sweetness, but I can help you to substitute some sensory modality that you otherwise not have at all. And therefore it creates a more kind of inclusive and accessible design. And you might actually decide to join your friends for a dinner again, because for many people with smell disorders, we know that they sometimes isolate themselves because they don't want to go out anymore because I cannot enjoy the food. And so there's a lot around sensory substitution using some of the research on cross-model associations.
It actually reminds me of the book I read when I was a kid. I think it's from Helen Keller. When she touched the water, she had difficulties to identify what is a water and what is a glass. For the people who have smell disorder, will that be any potential for them to heal it?
This is a very good question. In my career so far, I think I met 4 people who didn't have a sense of smell since birth, so congenital anosmia. It's very different from people who lost their sense of smell later on in life because they already built up some memories. If you don't know what you're missing, it's not impacting you as much as someone who loses it later in life. It's the same when you're born blind. You start exploring the world through touch, through sounds, through other modalities, and often they say it's those senses are heightened. That's just the way the world is for them, and they build up their memories around it. But people who lose their sense of sight later on in life, they are much more impacted because they know how rich the world is and the experiences there are and what they are missing. So there's a huge impact, and also on the mental health and a person's kind of like well-being in a way. Obviously, it depends a lot on everyone's personality. But yeah, I think that's one of the key differences. If I never ate in a Michelin star restaurant, I don't know what I'm missing. Every experience will affect your next experience. It's kind of accumulating your experience. So whatever your past defines also your future.
So you are right. If I never taste or smell anything, I can't imagine what it would be like. But do you think for humans we only have 5 senses? For example, we know in 10 seconds that we're getting along with someone. So is that related to smell, or do you think there has more senses?
I think there are 5 main. We have sight, hearing, touch, smell, and taste. But there are many more senses which we need to consider, like from proprioception, like the position of our body in the world, and many others which are discussed in the community. I think that there are some, they say there are 20 or 30 different senses. If we think of the 5 main senses, I think there is this example you mentioned, like when we meet someone the first time, we are creating an impression. And these first impressions, they are formed by our sensories, so how we sense, how we process the information, and then our reaction. And typically, if I just see you, then I judge based on the visual appearance, then I hear your voice. And then there is also our sense of smell, which we might not think it makes a huge impact, but actually it does. We often say there is a chemistry going on when you like someone, or I can't smell that person. And actually there is research that has shown that when we're meeting someone for the first time, we shake the hands or we hug or whatever. Typically it's shaking the hand. And then the first thing we do is we move that hand towards our nose, because that's how we are starting to sniff the other person and creating this picture. So this chemo signaling is not consciously happening, but it's kind of subconsciously we are sharing these chemical signals, and they also influence if we like someone, if we trust someone in this kind of first situations.
Another thing actually very interesting on the, let's say, category of the people who don't have smell. Now we go to the people who have super smells, like they trained themselves to be a sommelier or they are perfumer. What happened to their smell?
Sommeliers, the noses, perfumers, they all train their nose. I mean, this is their profession. So every day it's part of their job to kind of smell something, to make judgments and decisions in one or the other direction. And they go through the educational process as well. So basically, they are constantly exposed to it, while a lay person or everyday person who has a different profession doesn't kind of actively, mindfully put their nose to work. And I think that is very interesting because we all kind of have a sense of smell, unless you're born without the sense of smell, the opportunity to train our nose. Similar like a graphic designer, they get trained that they can distinguish different colors and different color patterns and shades. Where I say, oh, this is just red and it's another red, they might say, no, it's like completely different. If you think of another activity like a sports person, they train their body to do things we think they're superhumans. But I mean, they train 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, if not more. So it's all about training. So if you want to get your sense of smell improved, you can do that by training your nose. And that's one of the things we also did research on when we did introduce a new digital smell training device to people so they can do training their nose every day. So it's kind of a nose gym. You have a device that delivers scent. You have your mobile device where you can just connect to the device. You start a training session. It releases scent. You see if you can smell it. When you can smell it, you rate it, how intense you perceived it. And you are exposed to, in our case, 12 different stimuli with 6 smells. And then you have this rating. And you do this training twice a day. As you move on, you can see that there's an improvement of sense because you're also putting your mind to it. In our case, we didn't use it kind of like to just train, or at least we had 2 categories. Healthy individuals who didn't experience any smell disorders, so they just train their nose and see how well they are doing. And others who have smell disorders to see if you can get an improvement. And so in all of these cases, it's all about sticking with it and doing it over time. And so we did it over 6 months, every day, twice a day. And you can actually see that there is not a linear connection because our sense of smell is also affected by if it's cold, I have a cold, then you smell less, or if you eat something spicy, or if you're smoking or other kind of things, they affect also your smell perception. So it's not like linear, but what it showed is that people became much more mindful of their sense of smell, and not just when they did the training, but also when they walked around, they started to notice things they didn't notice before. And I think that is what distinguishes the people who do engage mindfully every day with it, versus we can do a little bit more to stay fit or to keep our nose active. And it's also quite useful because it helps us to counteract the natural decline of our senses, not just like our physical activity. You should walk to keep active. We can also keep our nose active to counteract the natural decline, because as our eyes, our hearing, also our sense of smell is declining as we are aging.
For those who don't know what is digital smell, can you tell us a little bit more about it?
If we think about digital smell, it's really that we have the ability now to control and deliver and process scents in a way as we can lights and sounds. And I think that is something where we move on, like if you take a candle, you can put it on and it will burn and it will release a scent if it's a scented candle. In digital smell, it's really about having the opportunity to say what you want to deliver, how you want to deliver it, how long you want to deliver it. And that can be in one location. Creating next to an ambient light, you can create an ambient scentscape. And then there are other approaches where digital smell is understood as transferring a scent from one location to a completely different, like from the UK to China. And like, how do we do that? That I can capture a scent here and then I recreate it in a different location there so you can also smell it. And that is a very different challenge, because how do we do that? Scents, they live in time and space. And scent experiences are not just the chemicals. There is much more to it to really realize digitizing scent.
I think many of us would like to relive our childhood memories. And one of those interesting dishes actually I had in one of the restaurants in UK, they give you a seashell, and when you taste it, they give you earphones so you can hear the sound of the sea. And that moment, it does trigger some sensors that when I taste it, it just simply tastes like the seaside when I was little. And those are the moments triggers me to think, many of our behaviors, it could be very much triggered by our surroundings. Do you, or is there any lab have a certain kind of profile for different smell, and then you can give it to the people who are study this?
Alluring to the cross-model correspondences. So you can drink a red wine in a red light environment, or you change it to blue and suddenly it becomes more acidic, and otherwise it becomes more full-bodied. So there are lots of kind of interesting things you can do with changing the ambience and also bringing you back in time. There is only a few across the world who really dive into that topic particular, and in my research over the last 15 years now, we have really looked into multisensory interfaces, both stimulation but also then the perceptual part. And so first we had to figure out how do we reliably recreate and create the sense stimulus, and on the other hand is like, how do people perceive it? And so now bringing it together and scaling it up so that we can personalize them for the hotels or office environments, you need more, right? You need to crack the RGB for smell. This is still a big challenge, but it's something we have been always trying to kind of set as our main target. And I think we're making some really good steps towards that, because we have finally built the platform to bring all the different data points, both the hardware, the software, and the understanding about the human perception together into one.
I feel it would be very interesting to have that. It's almost like how graphic design a poster. You guys as a smell scientist, they can basically use as a new canvas and colors.
That's also the exciting thing, because there is a lot of opportunity for creativity and innovation. But if you manage to establish this kind of common understanding, then you can train the future generation of designers for scent, scent designers, and they can then start integrating it more systematically with other sensory modalities. Like if you have a white light, then what kind of scent note do you need to add a good atmosphere? You need a language, you need a vocabulary in order for people to start allowing talking about it. And one of the first pieces of work we published around smell experiences was actually we built a toolkit for smell. It's kind of a Photoshop for smell, where you can plug in whatever printer or smell printer you want, and then you can choose to design your scent experience. So we gave different features of the different characteristics of scent and what their kind of attributes would be, and then you put it on a timeline. And so you can just like, through a graphical user interface, you build your own scent experience, and then you can recreate it. And so this is something we published this the first time, and we have now expanded on that and actually took it out from research into practice, where my former postdoctoral researchers took that whole kind of idea to then take the step out of academia into the commercial world, where she built up the startup Hynt. And that's where a lot of the efforts then have gone, and where you can also see how research can create a real world impact, which is what we academics live for, right? I mean, you don't want to just stay in an ivory tower. You want to actually improve people's lives. And I think making people more aware of the potential of their sense of smell, and that there are technologies that are developed and they can be part of your everyday life in the future, I think that's the dream.
I know you co-founded this company, and could you tell us what are the everyday application or who are your ideal customer?
It takes a long time to move something from research into practice and then really creating the impact. Early on when we started kind of really diving into that topic, we worked a lot with artists and creatives and immersive experience industries because they are very open to explore new types of interactions. They allowed us to really learn how our technology supports them, but also learn what we have to develop. So we worked early on with the team from 3VR. It's a multisensory virtual reality experience where you basically embody a tree. So you're in virtual reality under the surface of the forest. You start growing into a tall tree. Your hands become branches and then you can look around, the birds land on you. So you feel the wind, you have the temperature, but also at different points in the narrative, you also have the scent. Like in the moment you go into the forest ground, there is the smell of the forest ground, which then welcomes you and really makes it more immersive and real. And then also there are other stages, and at the end there is also the smell of smoke. Well, this is part of the Rainforest Alliance Against Deforestation, where the message is, please help us to save our forests. So in the end, humans cutting down the trees. This was super interesting for us because we worked with the creative team from New Reality in New York, and they have all the fantastic audiovisual experience, but we integrated the multisensory elements and particularly the scent. And that has been then a theme that a lot more immersive experiences were created from Foragers, which was for the mushroom world, which was in the Biennale last year. But I think what we were looking for was something where we also can really improve quality of life. At the same time as we worked with them, we also started working with Andreas Keller at Rockefeller University at the Neurogenetics Group, where they developed some new methods for early detection of neurodegenerative disease disorders like Parkinson and Alzheimer. And one thing they were trying to do is to develop a digital diagnostic tool. They had the chemicals, we had the technology to deliver. We started working with them, and it took till now that we've had the first publication on a digital smell test system. And we are also still doing some normative data collection at Geneva Hospital on smell testing. So like you test your eyes and hearing, you can test then also your nose. It's not there yet because it's a long process to introduce that in our healthcare system and all the regulatory pathways. But this was very important for us to support that. But at the same time, we wanted to bring it to people, where we then started developing a more consumer-facing solution, which was the digital smell training, where you can actually, at your home, train your nose to kind of counteract the natural decline with age, but also help you rehabilitate your sense of smell if you lost it, like during COVID. And so that was kind of like a line where we then went into well-being. And a main focus of Hynt now, as a first go-to market, is sleep. How can we enhance the quality of sleep through scent? And so that's where we have our digital scent platform, where you can create personalized scent experiences that help you fall asleep, stay asleep, and help you to wake up. Because Hynt is a very evidence-driven company, so we are very clear about the fact that we want to be science-driven. That means we want to be not just creating another gadget, but it should actually demonstrate an impact on your quality of sleep. And that's where we are currently validating our technology in a leading sleep clinic to really kind of establish this kind of effects on your sleep pattern and your brain activities. That is where we demonstrate how it could help your relaxation and so on. So we have some initial positive results, and we hope to have more to share in the coming months. We have now the opportunity to really explore the effect of scent. We know there is literature and research demonstrating the effect, but they are often very analog, like sprays on pillows and other kind of things. Here we have a real-time personalized integration with your sleep cycles as well. And hopefully that will help really many with sleep problems, which is actually a huge global problem, which is underserved when it comes to scent, because there is a lot with sounds, lights, mattresses, and whatnot. But when it comes to scent, we don't see much.
How can I improve the scent of my room to help me to sleep better?
A lot of people use things which you often hear, like lavender in their room, or they use scented candles. They are not adaptive. They are not taking your state into account. So that's one of the unique things which I think is the beauty of digital technology, that you can start having this real-time data processing and integration. So I can actually adjust to you as an individual and your bodily function, how tired you are or how active you are, and then based on that provide you with the right scent stimulus and the scent experience you need. That is where we're working towards, and with the ideal that you can actually partner with much what is already in our homes, because our homes become in some places more smarter. We have like the smart assistants from Google to Alexa. You could integrate that with a lot of kind of information like our smartwatches, where we are tracking many of our information and daily activities already. And then bringing the uniqueness of the scent in here with our platform would really allow you to create, hopefully, like in the moment, what you need to improve the quality of your sleep.
What I love about your work is actually everything is data and science driven. Walk us a little bit in the future. What could this smell technology or multi-sensors technology turning into?
What I wish the future of multisensory experiences looks like is wherever meaningful, we have access to those new sensory devices and interfaces so they can support us in mindful meditations, learning new topics if you're putting it in an educational context, help us to relax pre-surgery, or even just enjoy a movie more than just what I see and hear, but it is in a way seamlessly integrated in an ecosystem of devices and actuators and interfaces that surround us, and obviously also bringing new interfaces into that environment. And I think we need to substantially rethink also how we design future homes and environments. And just to give you an example, when we deployed the scent delivery device in people's home for the digital smell training, we also worked with an architect on that project because we also wanted, and ENT surgeons. So on one hand, we wanted to understand the medical aspect, but on the other hand, how do people place this new device in their homes? We're still analyzing all that data from the Smell Care project. But one of the fascinating things is really that you need to make it part of the environment so that it is visible, so that people remember to do the training. Because if you hide it away, you will forget. I mean, obviously you can do a lot of kind of reminders and those kind of things, but we are getting so many notifications, reminders, at some point people don't like that. But it's like the same principle, like out of sight, out of mind.
Right.
And so it's like, imagine a future home where technology is integrated into the environment as electricity and light is integrated. So you can switch on the light and you can then connect it with all the different devices who then may provide you with the right stimulation to do your workout or do relax on the sofa at the end of the day. But it's all kind of integrated. And obviously there is an element of AI now coming because that allows you to learn over time and personalize certain experiences based on your behaviors, your patterns, and then you can also improve it. That is the future where I hope that it's not an add-on, but it becomes part of the creation process. So you are thinking, if you're building new flats, how do we integrate not just light switches, but maybe a scent switch as well?
Just like what you say earlier, you don't know what you don't have, right? If we travel back to 2,000 years ago, people don't have an air con. They just say, okay, if it's winter, I'll just be cold. If it's summer, just be hot. But now it's already integrated into most of the apartment, I would say. If that's the same with the sense, maybe with 5 sensors being stimulated, we can really learn a way of compassion towards others. That will be a very interesting way to communicate and also to design our home in that way.
The senses, they can connect us, they can also divide us, especially when you think about scent. There are lots of examples where you might be repulsed by certain scents and others, they are attracting you. So that's the different attitudes or behaviors that can then be expressed. And I think what we should not forget is there are also very much differences in culture. Our appreciation, I think, for scent is not that strong. And last year I started working with Japan, with researchers there to really see how is the smell care culture different from the UK to Japan. And I mean, if you go into Japan, there is a very strong link to a smell or sense related to the status of a person, to how you are using it in a public context versus in a private context. And so it is really interesting to also learn from the different cultures to understand how they are placing scents already in their home. And the home is a very interesting one because that's where you can express yourself freely, because that is your private space versus in a public space or in a very confined office space, for example. So it's the space also defines what the experience could be. And then you have all the prior experiences and cultural backgrounds that come into play. So you need to customize it and personalize it, which again, digital technology can facilitate, and you're not stuck with one fixed kind of like element.
Asian culture is actually quite dedicated into details. There has a type of incense that if important guests coming in, the servants will burning the incense. Could you tell us a little bit more about smell disorders? How can they improve it?
Well, that's a huge question. There's not one answer to what causes smell disorders, and there are different types of disorders. It's really different if you're losing your sense of smell because of a viral infection, potentially just temporary, and then through training you can get it back. Or if you lost your sense of smell because of a head injury, because that might have cut your nerves and they don't regrow anymore, so you might not regain your sense of smell. That is a really important perspective, I think, where the clinicians really still trying to understand how can we help those people, and also have the different kind of mechanisms to examine, but it's not part of any routine checks, which I think through the support of creating a digital smell is what we're trying to help doing. And on the other hand, I worked closely together with the charity Fifth Sense, the charity to support people with taste and smell disorders. And I think through presenting our digital solutions at the annual meetings of the charity, I was having the opportunity to talk to people who have smell disorders, lost their sense of smell. Either they regained it, or they haven't, or they have never had a sense of smell. And one of the striking things there was people came in, had a discussion. They said, well, I didn't realize there are other people who had the same problems. I thought I'm alone. And I think that was really striking because it's an invisible disorder. And often we don't even know if our sense of smell is working as it should be, because there is no baseline. Some people say, oh, I have a fantastic sense of smell, or other people, they say, oh, I have a bad sense of smell. But how do they know? It's not that you can compare a number and you are there or there. And I think that is one of the biggest challenges we still have to solve, to really establish a uniform baseline so that people have a reference point to test their sense of smell, which then is brought also into the general public health system. So when you go to the GP, you can get your bodily functions checked, but also your sense of smell. And then you know, oh, there is a change in your sense of smell. So what does that mean? It might just mean that with age it's declining, or because of certain kind of things is declining, and you can maybe try to do help by doing the training. There are solutions which are related also with new drugs, which try to help get people sense of smell back. There is also the early detection of these changes and observing them, if they are just normal fluctuations or is there a specific anomaly in changes in my sense of smell, to understand if that may be an early biomarker for some disease development. In order to be able to do that, you have to have the data. You have to be able to record how you're perceiving it over time in order to be able to detect that. And based on that, you can then establish new guidelines and principles for regular testing or training, and then interventions that are personalized to the individual. But it has to start as school kids, I feel, where we should have a better understanding of it, so the awareness is there, detect it early.
From your research, what are the best possibilities for the future of the multisensory technology?
In an ideal future, we have devices that can be available to us whenever we need them. My favorite visionary, Mark Weiser in computer science, who introduced the human is in the center of the attention and technology disappears in the surrounding. And whenever I need anything, then technology will be the assistant and make the different interactions accessible, be it to augment my olfactory perception because I want to amplify the smell of the dish, or I would like to hear the sound of a bird which is too far away for me to hear. Use really this kind of modalities and its cross-modal correspondences in order to create a future where I'm more capable to mix and match sensory elements to create new experiences. It's very abstract. If I think of our technology right now, you have a device, it becomes a bit more embodied, be it through new wearable solutions or be it through things being just in the environment. I hope that in the future, technology really supports us whenever it's needed in a meaningful way, and the human is put at the center of the attention, and it's not the technology that takes away the attention. I mean, if you think how AI is advancing, how humanoid robotics is advancing, do we need humans? You could replace me with an AI here. Would the AI do a better job? But what distinguishes us as humans still from the machine? What is it that makes us human? When we are designing multisensory experiences and using the advances in multisensory technology, we should keep that in mind, how we preserve that humanness, but still allow us to augment our experiences or substitute our experiences so that it helps us in our everyday life and quality of life.
And what you would say is the biggest surprising fact about our smell?
The most surprising thing is the ability to just bring us back in time, where it's connecting us with our memories and gives us this emotional connection which no other sense does. Every time is surprising because it's like flushing back things that you have forgotten. If we can harness that more, maybe it will help us also in our cognitive abilities. I mean, one of the things research has shown in analog smell training is the regular mindful exposure to scents is not only improving your scent perception, but it also has positive cognitive side effects. It helps us to memorize things and be more capable in our cognitive processes, which I think is exciting because that means we can keep our brain fit through our nose. It is so unique, and I think every single part we should cherish and we should not forget.
What are one or two longevity tips you have in your daily life that you think contribute to your health?
Longevity is really interesting because I started thinking about that lately a bit more than before. And so my husband and I, we started really focusing on routines. The start and the end of the day have become extremely important. And I think that routine and also a good night's sleep, actually. The one thing I enjoy a lot, which I again started a lot in that routine, is cooking. Cooking relaxes me a lot. I don't follow recipes. I open the fridge, I take what I have, and then I just cook. And the cooking process and then the eating creates another nice routine.
Thank you, Marianna, for your time today. It's a very fascinating topic.
Thanks very much for having me. I really enjoyed.
Thank you for watching this episode of the Humanware Project. It is very important for us if you can subscribe and share so we can continue to bring those amazing topics to you. Thank you.